Howdy, folks. It is Thursday, March 13th, and welcome to TASB Talks, the podcast bringing you the latest happenings and insights into Texas public education. I'm your host, Matt Mitchell, Senior Communications Specialist here at TASB. I'm joined once again by Docs Gonzalez, Division Director of TASB Governmental Relations. And it's been another busy week at the 89th Texas Legislature, hasn't it, Docs?
Yeah, Matt, it's just going to get busier from here on out. So it is officially, I think last time I said it's officially in full swing. It's in fuller swing now. I mean, we're in it.
And perhaps in even more full of a swing next week, who knows, or next 2 weeks. It's not slowing down anytime soon. I can barely keep up myself here in comms land, so I honestly don't know how y'all do it in GR.
A lot of good folks doing a lot of good work.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, let's just kind of jump right into it. Speaking of a busy week, well, I guess first let's go back to last week. We had House Bill 2 was heard on, I believe it was March 4th and 6th. That was last, we're recording this again on Thursday, the 13th. So that was last Tuesday and Thursday. They had two hearings for House Bill 2. That's, of course, Chair Brad Buckley's bill for school finance. That was heard by the House Public Education Committee. So why don't you just kind of give us a rundown of what happened with that before we jump into this week?
Yeah, so what they did was they split up the bill into two hearings where the first hearing was all invited testimony. So that was a chance for the committee to, or for Chair Buckley to lay out the bill and then the committee to ask questions about it and then to have invited testimony. And then the second hearing on Thursday was for public testimony. So for those interested in coming in and testifying on the bill, they could come in and give those thoughts. And it was probably a pretty good idea because I think if that would have been all one day, it would have been a very long day like it was this week. But a lot of good stuff. And just for the folks out there, House Bill 2 is Chair Brad Buckley's proposal to move almost $8 billion into the public education system, new money, through different measures. You know, we talked a few weeks ago about on the Senate side how their school finance proposal was anchored largely on a almost $5 billion infusion into teacher compensation in their proposal. On the House side, that funding would be distributed across things like the basic allotment, which is great. It's about $3.1 or $3.2 billion for the basic allotment, which only comes out to about $220 per kid. So not quite where a lot of folks were hoping that number would be. Just to catch up to inflation, that number should be about $1,300. But there are other things in the bill that kind of help take pressure off of that basic allotment. The House Bill 2 also increases the small and mid-sized allotment, which is really good for a lot of our members and a lot of those smaller schools out there where per student funding doesn't necessarily make as big of an impact as an allotment like the small size school allotment. The bill also does things like move special education funding to an intensity-based formula of funding instead of more of a structured set where everyone gets the same amount of funding. So kids who have more need and require more services at school would get more funding attached to their education. So, and that's an expensive proposition. It's about $1.8 billion is what that costs. And so when you add those things together, and then there's another, I think, $1.5 billion in there for specific grant programs that run through TEA. And then there's also some teacher incentive allotment in there also. When you add those together, it totals up to just shy of $8 billion, I believe. So it is a significant amount of funding. And the testimony that we heard throughout both days spanned the gamut. You had folks that said it wasn't enough funding for what school districts needed. Some people saying it was probably too much in the wrong areas. You had some people saying that more of the money should be provided through the basic allotment or through more flexible funding as opposed to targeted funding, and those saying that it should probably be targeted more so that schools are required to use it in the most appropriate way. So we always hear all of these kinds of debates during these hearings, and it is, I think, a very useful exercise because it is usually the answer is somewhere in the middle. And so we'll see. The bill was left pending, so there wasn't any action taken on it. And, this is a very hefty bill, a lot of moving parts within it. And so my thing is that the Chair Buckley will be working on this for a while. to get it in shape to vote it out and then get it to the House floor.
Yeah, and Chair Buckley really has his work cut out for him. Between that and now we kind of move to this week. This week's kind of flavor of the week is education savings accounts vouchers. That was HB3, Chair Buckley's other bill that was heard Tuesday, March 11th. Again, today's Thursday the 13th, and that was another very lengthy process. It was almost 24 hours, I believe, of testimony. They started at
It was just shy of 24
just
hours.
shy of 24 because they started at 8 a.m. and they finished at it was
Around
like
6:30 or so. Yeah,
man, that was yeah, another long day. I mean, these are all going to be long days going forward here in session. But so what happened with that? Where are we now with HB3?
Yeah, well, like you said, Chair Buckley is really busy. These are two very hefty bills, and like I said, a lot of moving parts within both bills. And this second bill, House Bill 3, instead of breaking it up across two hearings, was heard in one hearing, and that's why we got this marathon hearing. Which, every session there's at least one of them. You don't ever want it to be in the committee that you're following. You're hoping that it's in somebody else's committee, but it was House Pub Ed this time around. And for those that may not remember, House Bill 3 is an education savings account voucher bill that is a little bit different than the Senate version of the ESAs that came out a few weeks ago. This bill would create education savings accounts through the Texas Comptroller to be administered by the Comptroller and I think up to 5 certified educational assistance organizations. And these accounts would be worth up to, I think it's $10,000 for kids attending private school. And then for those who have special needs, they would be entitled to, well, and when I say $10,000, it is about $10,500 because it actually isn't a defined number. What it says in the bill is it is the average state and local effort that school districts receive. So that number would change. So there's an automatic growth factor already in House Bill 3 for this proposal. But for those kids who are receiving special education services, they could receive up to $30,000 because they'd be entitled to whatever funding they're getting at that public school that they'd otherwise be attending. So that number could be anything, which I think would make it really hard to determine the fiscal note because there was a fiscal note on there. And I think every year it grows significantly. And I think by the end of when we get to 2030, the total cost of this program I think is going to be somewhere around $11 billion because it's like $1 billion in the first biennium, and then you get to like another 3 or 4 in the second, and then a few more in the next, and so that all adds up to around 11 billion. And that was one of the things that we heard during. Oh, and before I get off topic, and it includes $2,000 for kids who are homeschooled. So that's kind of the universe there. But that's one of the things that we heard in testimony was that this bill is really a growth in government as well as a growth in spending. And so that fiscal note by the Legislative Budget Board highlights the fiscal part of it, but also notes that I think there are going to be another close to 50 state employees. I think it's 49 state employees or 47, 49 state employees over the next few years. And so you had some, there were folks from all over supporting and opposing the bill. But what was interesting was to see there were some folks out there really highlighting the fact that it was an intrusion of the government on private schools or home schools or the growth of government through spending or staff increase. So, but yeah, we heard all the arguments that you would hear at a voucher hearing. This is, I don't know how many voucher hearings this is now. For me, it's a lot, and the arguments are very similar. But you had some folks saying that this is going to help every child in every school and save the state money. And then you have others saying that it's going to bankrupt the state and harm every child. So again, somewhere in the middle is probably where the truth lies. But it was a very, very long hearing.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, this is a very, very long day. We said before, almost 24 hours, and like you said, there were a lot of people coming to testify from really all walks of life, which is very cool to see. We saw trustees from all over. I know off the top of my head, we had Coppell, Blanco, Round Rock. Speaking of Blanco, Stephen Mackey, a new trustee who I've talked to pretty recently, he was there, did a great job. Shout out to him. Is there anyone else you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, no, it was great to see these folks there. We saw Brian Hollybeck from Thrall there, Heather Sheffield from Eanes ISD, Lynn Boswell from Austin ISD, and I can't forget our good friend Daniela Valdez Lopez from Brownsville ISD. Shout out to the Valley. It's just really great seeing these trustees getting involved and this organic process of them networking and finding themselves and coming to the Capitol and advocating. And, over the last 20 years that I've been here, we've always had trustees coming and advocating, but I feel like the level of engagement has just really increased over the past few years. And it's just really encouraging to see them there and getting involved. And it's just really great to see. It's really uplifting, and hopefully it has an impact, and hopefully it continues to grow.
It is. I mean, the stakes are very high this time around, obviously, and I think trustees realize that. And I mean, not just trustees, everyone who went and testified on this bill kind of realizes what's at stake, and it was great to see. You can keep up with all that by, again, subscribing to our legislative report. We get that. You're sending that out multiple times a week now, I believe.
Yeah. Probably about 3-4 times a week.
Yeah. So you'll get those, a ton of those every week. Lots of good, juicy details in that. You can keep up there, and you can keep up here. TASB Talks. We try to record bi-weekly. We're going to stay on that schedule, especially during session. And so you can find us back here in a couple of weeks. And thank you, Docs, again for being here. We appreciate it as always.
Yeah, Matt, appreciate being here.
And thank you, the listeners and the watchers, for tuning in. Again, this is TASB Talks. You can find us on Apple, on Spotify, and you can watch us on YouTube at the TASB News YouTube page. So thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate it.